Brought to you by Prescient Investment Management. Informed by science, guided by insight. Prescient Investment Management is an authorized FSP.
Welcome to Honest Money. I'm really excited today to bring, I guess you're now a repeat guest, Rory Brachner, who's Managing Director of DoshGuide. Thanks so much for joining us again.
It's an honor to be back. Thanks, Warren.
So we're talking about a topic which is very close to my heart. We're talking about financial planners or financial advisors. And I think it's a nice topic because I can bring you in to kind of be the objective voice away from me, because otherwise it'll sound like I'm talking about myself. But I think we need to focus a little bit about helping people understand what actually a great financial planner does. And then how do you find these mythical beasts, these unicorns, flying whales or whatever they are, because I think it's quite hard sometimes for people who are not in the industry and who are not kind of experienced with financial planners to identify how do you differentiate between the smooth talking salesman who's got a snappy dresser in a shiny suit and someone who kind of does the job very well. And I think distinguishing between those is hard. I know it's not easy. I can't always do it. So that's the topic today, and that's why we've got Rory on the show, because that's what DoshGuide is about. It's about actually helping connect good financial planners with clients on the other end, and doing it in a way, certainly from a fee point of view, that aligns everyone's interests in a kind of the most honest, most ethical way there is. Is that a good summary, Rory?
And that's a great summary. And I kind of like that image of the sort of the shiny suited sort of salesman who's kind of selling their wares. I think that unfortunately there is a lot of that for whatever reason, and I think it's actually probably related to the sort of incentives that are inherent in the sort of financial services or financial advisory industry. But for whatever reason, there is a lot of that in the sort of financial advice space. There is a lot of people kind of pushing products and not necessarily operating sort of in the interest of the client, and it is difficult to try and kind of search through all that and sort of find the ones that are actually not in that mode, and the ones that are not trying to sort of push products and are operating sort of in your interest and looking at things holistically, and ultimately helping you with your financial wellness, moving you in a positive direction, so that you feel better, you're sort of more confident about your finances, you're in control, you're not making sort of fundamental mistakes, and you're sort of planning for yourself and your family. But yeah, it's not that easy to find those.
So I think maybe let me kick off with all the kind of disclaimers, which is one that you will find people who only charge upfront commissions. They work for one big insurance agent, are agents for one big insurance company or one big bank, and they get paid in the way that I find the most objectionable, etc., but are still great financial planners who still do a very ethical job and still deliver the right outcomes for their clients. So I think it's important for me to say that we need to be balanced in our commentary, that you can find independent financial advisors who've studied all the qualifications, done their certified financial planners, who tell you that they charge in the right way, etc., and they might be really dodgy, really unethical. And then you get people who, according to the theory, might kind of get paid in the worst way possible with all the conflicts, etc., and actually deliver great advice. And I think, just to be clear there, that the financial planning industry covers a very wide spectrum, both of skills and experience, and then different ways of getting paid, and different employers and employees. And I think it's always, it's incumbent on us to say, we need to give people listening the skill set to understand how to judge a great financial plan and how to judge great advice, and then distill out the bad operators, and then focus on okay, who's kind of going to work for me. And I think that's always, my industry is really kind of good at creating controversy, and I've certainly done that. The early days of my career of saying, if you if you deal with an insurance agent, he's just there to sell you rubbish, and that's it's probably true, but equally not always true every time, and so. I just want to put it out there because I know we've got people in the financial services industry that listen to us as well, and so don't start sending me abusive tweets. And now I'm not gonna read them. I've given you your dues. If you're a good advisor, well done. But I think there are ways, and I think that's to what you would tell me, Rory, is that if you can align the way someone gets paid for delivering advice with the best interest of the client, you give a better chance of a good outcome of advice and good outcome for the end client. And I think that's an important point.
Yeah, and I love the way that you framed it. I think it's not that if the incentives aren't aligned, and there is like a sort of like an upfront commission basis, it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get bad advice. It's just more likely you'll get bad advice or sort of conflicted advice. There are great advisors out there who operate in all the different sort of models and all the different fee models and incentive models that do a great job. But you're less likely to find ones where the incentives aren't aligned. If the person is only getting paid, when a product is sold or when they sort of collect assets, often that's what they will focus on, and that's kind of just human nature, right? That's not even necessarily someone's fault. Like if the revenue generating activity for your sort of month to month in order to pay your bills and pay your mortgage and feed your family, you're going to focus on the things that sort of generate revenue, right? And that's just human nature. Like there's a great Sam Altman quote that I read recently that kind of and Sam Altman's the CEO of OpenAI, which is obviously causing massive waves these days in the sort of AI space. And he says, setting incentives is a superpower. Five words that changed how I think about almost everything. And I came across that yesterday, actually. And I think that's just so, I think it's sort of quite echoing of what the point we're making is that incentives are powerful drivers of human behavior. And if incentives aren't set up in the right way, then it can drive the wrong behavior. But you do get exceptions. You get people who rise above the incentives, and still do a good job for their clients. But I think also what I'd love to kind of give a bit of context out is like, maybe to go a little deeper into that and to explain what does the sort of financial advice process look like, and then disambiguate, like, in that process of those 4 steps, where is if the incentives aren't lined up, what do people focus on versus not focusing on?
So I've got to get you to de-techify some of your language there. What's disambiguate, Rory?
So what I mean is like, that's a fancy word, right? I mean, if we start to like go through the actual process and make it more tangible, like this is what good financial advice looks like, and this is, there's 4 steps. Like I'll give you a framework, for example, of what good financial advice looks like, and then we can talk about like more specifically where things go wrong if the incentives aren't lined up, as opposed to if they are lined up. And that's just kind of one element of it, right? So I've got a great framework that I sort of like to talk about, which is that this is what financial advice looks like. There's 4 steps to it, right? There's the discovery step, which is basically like, this is where you get to know each other. Very importantly, you leverage the advisor to identify your goals, and also the advisor's gathering a bunch of information about you, right? So that's step 1, which I will call the discovery step. The next step is around what I call sort of fundamentals or sort of foundation building, which is like, this is a step that's often skipped by, I guess the advisors that are maybe not incentivized in the right way, which is like, before we even talk about products or planning for your future, let's just make sure you've got the fundamentals right. Do you have an emergency fund? Like, how much debt do you have, and how can we coach and manage and help you to reduce debt and get it to an appropriate level? Even basic stuff like budgeting. How do we make sure that your budgeting you're spending money in the right ways, or at least you're aware of where you're spending your money? And this is not about like controlling what you spend or reducing what you spend. But being aware of it and sort of planning around that is just super fundamental, and then, what is your relationship with money? Like, what are your assumptions about money? Maybe you've inherited some assumptions from your parents about, like, property is the only way to go. I need to invest everything in property. This is a pretty typical one in South Africa, I find. That's the second step. So it's discovery is the first step, getting to know each other, figuring out your goals, etc. Second step, which is often overlooked, is more around the fundamentals, getting the basics in place, getting an emergency fund in place, making sure your budgeting is under control. Then the third step is around planning. And this is the part that often advisors skip to, because that's the part where they get paid, right? And that's the part where there's products involved. But the problem is those first two steps are really foundational. And if you haven't done discovery and really figured out what the goals of the person are, and if you haven't done and figured out some of the fundamentals, like, let's reduce your debt. Let's not even talk about, like, trying to invest money. You need to, like, get your debt under control, or you don't have an emergency fund in place. Let's first do that for the next 4 or 5 months before we even talk about, like, investments, right? But back to the framework. That third part, which I would call planning, is around planning for anything. So this is your present self doing a favor for your future self, right? So it could be around investments is a traditional thing that people do a lot of planning, like financial advisors often look into investments. It's around risk, like what happens to me, what happens to my family if something goes wrong with me, if I pass away or I'm disabled or whatever the case may be. It's also around, the thing is, it doesn't have to be just investments and risk. Planning can also be around any big, financial decisions, whether it's like buying a property, whether it's like going away on a holiday and trying to plan that big overseas trip, whether it's education, like funding my education or my kids' education. These are all big things that we need to plan, present self doing a future for a favor for future self. And then the last bit of the 4-step process, which is around execution, which is, okay, we've got, the discovery sorted out. We've figured out your goals. We've got the fundamentals in better shape. We're starting to do some planning around, you want to buy a property, or you want to go on that overseas holiday, or we need to look at your retirement and make sure that you're putting a good amount enough away. Now that's all great. We've figured all that, but now we have to execute. And this is another part that often advisors really fall short because unless it's around a product, there's not necessarily revenue generating activity. And this is where the real magic happens, I think. Anyone can create a plan and email a plan to you, but the magic happens in actually executing against that plan, in making changes in your behavior, in shifting towards the goals that you've put into that plan. And I think that framework, I think, is a great way of thinking about what's the difference between a good advisor and a not so good advisor. Like, a not so good advisor would be very much focused on just the stuff that, generates revenue. And often it's an incentive issue. And they might just skip the first 2 steps and go straight to planning, which is often not going to get you great results. And so a great advisor goes through all those steps and really holistically looks at things and does it in a sort of an ongoing basis also.
So I think it's a lovely framework, and it's always good to revisit this. I've been doing this a long time, and it's always great to kind of get people who kind of look at our industry with a clean slate, a blank piece of paper, and say, how should it be? As opposed to how it is, because I think that's an important distinction, and I like your framework. I know the Financial Planning Institute would kind of have a 6-step financial planning process, and all of those. I think the important part of this, firstly, is it should be structured. There should be a clear methodology to how a financial planner works, and actually also how a client works with a financial planner. The one comment that I want to make there is, if you're listening to this show, understand that a great financial planner can do nothing if you're not doing your part. It's incumbent on you as someone who, this plan is being done for you, both your present self, your future self, and if you're kind of not doing your homework, you're not providing the information, you're not having the honest conversations with the advisor, then even the best advisor in the world is not going to deliver a good outcome for you, because you're not bringing your part, as the person that actually has the most risk here. And I think it's always, it's interesting talking to people, and they'll say, I phone my advisor and I tell them to, like, give me a great investment. It should double every 5 years, and that's it. I don't want to know the rest. Don't tell me the excuses or the story, or I hate all insurance, and I'm not even going to consider it. And I always sit there thinking to myself, high quality advisors, if they're doing their job properly, they're spending quite a bit of time with you, asking you uncomfortable questions, asking you to think about things in a way you probably haven't thought about, and also, yes, getting you to do some homework. And if you think this is, I'm going to spend the same half an hour I would have spent on choosing a new fridge and my whole financial future is sorted out, no. This is a process. You have work to do. You have a responsibility to look after yourself. You have to make smart decisions. And the way to get the best out of a great advisor is do the work together. It's not one person who sits. It's like parents saying, the teachers of my children should do a great job, and it's not my job to teach my kids how to read, or how to be great human beings. It's surely everyone's job. And I think often this process, where you see great advisors, where does it fall down? It's clients putting all the responsibility for their financial futures on their advisor, hoping that that's going to work out well. Let me tell you something for free. This is honest money. No one's paying. It doesn't work out well if you don't do your homework and you don't do your part. You have to do your part. You have to take this seriously, and you have to put in the time and the effort. One of the things you mentioned there is the B word, the dreaded budget. And I don't know why it's dreaded. I think it should be exciting for people to kind of get an understanding of how they spend their money and what they would like to spend on their future selves in their future lives. And if you're not doing the budget, you're not doing the homework for it because it's boring, well, congratulations. What you are going to do is guarantee a really lousy outcome for yourself in the future, and you're relying enormously on luck. And I think all of that is just not sensible to me. So I know you're methodical, Rory, and I know I'm going to jump around because I like to freak you out as well a little bit.
Yes, why not?
So let's just look at discovery quickly. And to me, discovery is an important thing. It's when you talk to kind of career coaches or performance coaches, they often have a chemistry session with a potential client before they even start, before anyone's gone anywhere. And it's just to figure out, can we work together? Do we connect? And do I as a client trust you as an advisor? And do you as an advisor feel you can work with me? And if you're not having those kinds of conversations early on, understand that a relationship with an advisor might be a once-off thing. That does happen, but equally it could be a 30 or 40-year relationship. And you surely have to trust each other, be honest with each other, and know that you actually want to chat to each other, yes, in good times, but equally in bad times. And you made some comments there around understanding the person's relationship with money. I think it's a brilliant thing to understand. Our country is populated with people whose parents might have had no formal education, who've never been in the formal financial system. They've never had a bank account. Their relationship with money is going to be fundamentally different from somebody who's kind of grown up, with parents that have been in the formal financial system for decades. And so, understanding all of that history with a person's money, I think it is a key point. And I think it's right that you put it up front before we start talking about your budget and your how you want to spend or how you want to save. Let's just understand the human, because the human is going to make this thing work or it's going to derail. And all of that is important stuff to have cleared out before the time. So I think you're right. I think I'll give you that. I think you may be a little bit unfair to the investment advisors. Someone like me, we'll jump to a plan, not because we want to sell a product, but because it's comfortable for us. It's something that we know as investment advisors, and it's something that we spent decades studying and getting the experience, and we want to share the knowledge and help someone go. That doesn't mean that that's where we should start. It means that we need to go back. And I think if you're a client, if you're listening to this and you're saying, look, my advisor always jumps to the plan, the index, the unit trust, and they don't spend that much time on me and my stories, it might be that they're just interested in selling a product. And then Rory's right. I feel sometimes it's just that's their zone of comfort. That's the thing that they're comfortable with, and that they feel uncomfortable asking you the difficult questions. And sometimes clients go, I'm not telling you about my history with money. I'm not sharing that stuff with you. It's none of your business.
Right.
That's a phrase. Yeah, I'm not interested in that. It's none of your business. But those are questions that get asked quite a bit, or answers given to questions. I feel if you're going to use an advisor and it's a high quality advisor, you need to use them. And that means trust them with the information, or don't use them. Move on. Find someone you trust. But if you're not going to trust the advisor with honest conversations, then you're not getting the tools that, or not using the tools that you've got at your disposal.
Yeah, I guess, yeah, it is about like, what are you looking for? To your point, like, are you even interested in holistic, multi-stepped financial planning? You might just be looking for very specific tactical advice, in which point, like, maybe it makes sense to just find somebody who can kind of zero in on that. I would say sometimes it's really difficult. I think clients often think that a question like which RA should I get is a very easy question to answer. And it's maybe not as easy as they think it's an easy question, but it's not as easy to answer. But yeah, it is about like, what are you looking for? And if you are looking for like, if you're looking for holistic sort of financial planning, then yeah, you should be looking for somebody that is going to be able to give you that.
And I think holistic financial planning, it's a big word, and maybe just for people, again, what does that mean? That, to me, I'm going to use a parallel here. If the medical industry really worked, what would happen is you would be paying a GP, a general practitioner, to keep you healthy. You would be paying them to kind of look at how things are going. How do you eat? How do you sleep? How do you exercise? What are the supplements you're taking, if you need any? All of those things. And the GP doing well would be paid to look at the whole of you and then to keep you healthy. And if something goes wrong, to help you fix whatever the issue is as fast as possible. And holistic financial planning, for me, that's really the answer. It's someone that looks at the whole of you as a client and says, I need to understand a lot about you, because you've arrived asking me, should I choose this share, this unit trust, this index, or this life assurance policy? And those are pieces of a puzzle, but we haven't even spoken about the picture on the box, the whole of you. And I need to understand all of that. And if it's irritating to you as a client listening to that, and you're wondering why on earth that financial planner is asking all the stuff which seems unrelated to the very question you arrived with, they're actually doing a great job. They're actually trying to understand you. And then you need to trust in the process. And I'm not saying you shouldn't get an answer to the question. You need an answer to the question, whatever the question was. But there is a lot to deal with there. And if you're not prepared to share that information, or you're just not interested, then I like Rory's point. That actually, you might just need a stockbroker, or you might just need an insurance salesman just to sell you the life policy because you just want the home loan and the bank's forcing you to get a life policy. But then it's important for that person to say to you, there's a lot going on here, and you're looking at this little part of your life, and there might be a whole lot going wrong. But if that's all you want, fine. Let me do that for you, and let's have a better conversation in the future. Just understand, great advisors are looking at the whole, always.
Totally. And yeah, so you got to almost do both. You got to meet the client where they are and answer the questions that's sort of top of mind. But you also got to give at least some context to, well, there's other stuff that we could be looking at, and where it could be, you could be getting more holistic sort of advice that could move the needle more than just this thing that you think is important. In fact, maybe there's some education there in terms of informing and enlightening the client as to, there's actually some broader, more strategic things that we could be thinking about that will actually have more impact than what you think this specific tactical question has. And the other thing that I sort of think about as we're chatting is just like how important the theme that's coming up for me, and the word that's coming up for me, is around coaching. I think like coaching is just such an important function of a good holistic financial advisor. And to your earlier point, like, not a lot of financial advisors feel comfortable with that label, right? It's a specific skill set, and they're much more comfortable to jump to the technical work of, I'm going to, here's the asset allocation, here's the funds that we're selecting, here's the returns, here's the reports on that, because that's what they see their strength as, that's what they've studied, that's what they've focused their energy on. And so, they don't necessarily see themselves as like a coach. But, I feel that actually there's probably more value to that part of things in all those different steps, from discovery to figuring out the fundamentals to your planning to actually executing and coaching you along to execute against that plan and to change your behavior. I would argue that there's probably more value to that, especially nowadays that the investment side of things is so commoditized. And a lot of the sort of passive side of things is working so well, compared to sort of human advisors. So if that's sort of commoditized, it's not to say that's not important, and not to say there's no value to someone keeping an eye on that. But I think there's just so much broader value that you can get from the sort of coaching, more holistic side of things.
Yeah, I think it is kind of a growing field in the world of financial planning worldwide. Is kind of saying, hang on, the industry has been very technical and very focused on certain aspects of, technical in the sense that it could be around a policy document for life assurance, or it could be around an asset allocation and deep financial modeling and all of that. And those are not irrelevant. They are important. But if you haven't really understood the human being at the end of who actually is at the core of the whole process, and you're misdirecting all of your well-intended advice, you're actually derailing everything. And we know that must be the case, because time and time again, when the world gets scary, people disinvest all their money and they put it into cash. And when the world's overly optimistic and things are too expensive in the investment world, that's when people tend to invest. All of those are emotional decisions. They're not rational, kind of calculated calls. And that's because I think the industry is too focused on the wrong things and not on the core human being. It also gives me comfort that at least for the next few months and maybe hopefully years, that we can't replace ourselves with a high quality AI engine, because AI is great at some things, but understanding a human being, it's not so good at yet. Maybe it changes next week, and maybe there's a new innovation and I'll be replaced by a robot. But for now, maybe that's it's a core thing. If you're a kind of aspiring financial planner listening to this, I agree with Rory. For once, I agree with you, Rory. But I agree with Rory there. It's actually about understanding the human and using those kind of superpowers of empathy, and then asking great questions that are uncomfortable sometimes, that do lead to sometimes anger or tears or whatever else that comes out, whatever the emotions are, but getting to the core of a person and then directing their plan to deal with their values and their core is much more valuable than a fantastic asset allocation or a 50-year cash flow projection that's going to tell someone they need life assurance or disability. Those things are at the end of the process. They're not at the start. The start is get to the human. And Rory, we're way past time here, so I'm gonna wrap it up. But I wanted to ask you, if you're sitting there and you weren't the managing director of DoshGuide, and you had to say to someone, "This is how you choose a great financial planner," what would you say?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say two things. One is like you want to make sure that they are, from a regulatory perspective, they're beholden to regulatory bodies in the industry. So if anything goes wrong, like that you've got, due course that you can raise the issues with. And that's, anybody who's an actual registered financial advisor. And the top echelon of that is a CFP, Chartered Financial Planner. So if you can find one of those, great. If not, there are other ones that you could find. So I'd say that's the one side of things. And the second side of things is making sure that you understand how they're being remunerated, and you're considering, the models, which you mentioned, the commission-based model. There's also other models, and there's now these sort of new subscription-based models that we sort of support at DoshGuide. But being aware of, are the incentives of this person aligned with me? Are they just going to be trying to sell me products and collecting assets, or are they going to be incentivized to also look at things more holistically, like we discussed?
So, and I think my comment there, I again, I'm trying to find disagreements, but I'm agreeing with you again, Rory. It's going to rain. So there, I think just to understand certified financial planners, you'll see their industry, the industry body there is called the Financial Planning Institute, and to me that is the ticket to the game. I think if you know that the person's a certified financial planner, it doesn't mean that's a guarantee that they're going to be great advisors and purely interested only in your best interest. But I think it is the bar. It means that they're meeting an ethical standard, education standard, and an experience standard, and they're willing to put in the time and the effort every year to stay educated, to stay current. And I think that that's important. And then my other comment there would be, don't be afraid to have the money question up front. In other words, tell me how you're going to get paid. Just explain it to me. I want to know what is this going to cost me, and how are you as the advisor getting paid for the conversations and that we're having today and in the years ahead. And as we said at the start, they might only get paid upfront commissions. Don't be afraid to ask that, and ask, if that's the case, how does that align with my interests? Equally, someone who's getting paid a monthly fee or a monthly subscription, understand that. How much is it? Is it, are you going to be around in a year's time if you're only earning this, or is it a good fee? Is it too high or is it too low? I think we're too afraid, to ask those money questions up front. And I'm not saying we need to be confrontational. Having a civilized conversation about how you get paid is important. If you want to sell me a fancy car, I might buy it at 500,000 Rand, but I probably won't buy it at 1 million Rand. Tell me up front how much it costs, so I don't get excited and then disappointed at some point. So I think it's important there, be transparent yourself. If you're a client and advisors, be transparent about how you're going to get paid. Everyone's clear up front. You're not having these conversations in 1 or 3 years' time when someone's disappointed. And I think that those things, transparency around fees and income, it's healthy. It's a good thing to do. If governments work transparently, things would be a lot better. So in the world of money, definitely the same. Rory, Managing Director of DoshGuide, I really appreciate your time and your enthusiasm for this. I hope your company keeps going from strength to strength. I think it's a valuable addition to the financial planning environment in South Africa, and certainly, it's not the dominant way of doing financial planning yet. Let's see how it goes. I'm hopeful that it keeps growing and does become a big force for good in the country. So thanks for your time.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Warren. It's great.
Brought to you by Prescient Investment Management. Informed by science. Guided by insight. Prescient Investment Management is an authorized FSP.